Welcome to Law You Should Know. The law affects every aspect of our lives, our home, our jobs, and our recreational activities. Now you can learn about the law and how to protect yourself against the loss of your liberty or property. Learn how to stand up for your rights and seek compensation when you have been wronged. Your host for Law You Should Know is attorney Kenneth J. Landau with the Mineola law firm of Shane, Dox, Denisi, and Corker. He's a member of the Committee on Professional Ethics of the Bar Association of Nassau County and counsel to the Nassau Academy of Law. And now, here is your host for Law You Should Know, attorney Kenneth J. Landau.
Hi, this is Ken Landau, and welcome to Law You Should Know. Our program today is about preventing construction accidents, and our guest is Patrick Tarrant, and he's the founder and CEO of Crane Management, a consulting agency for construction companies in New York City and the New York area. And he also is an expert witness in construction and safety cases, and he's very involved with crane operations. Patrick, welcome to Law You Should Know.
Thank you, Ken.
And we'll talk more about the details and why everyone should pay attention to safety on a construction accident and some of the things that can happen if people are not. But how big a problem is safety on a construction accident?
It's a huge problem for the contractors. It's a huge problem for everybody because people don't realize the huge cost. If you have an accident, it costs you an insurance. If you're in New York City, you'll have a stop work order. It costs an incredible amount of money when you get a stop work order because everybody's affected. Everybody goes home. The subcontractors deploy their people to other jobs because a stop work order is generally, it may be a 3, 4, 5 day event depending on, and it's not just after an accident, if there are unsafe conditions. So there's a huge cost. And the problem is that the people with authority very often don't have experience, and the people with experience don't have authority.
And it's an interesting way of putting it. And, of course, there could be very serious consequences for the workers if they're injured on the job. And it can be a high-tech job, a big project, or a little project that's not managed properly. And there can be criminal consequences if they're, the owner or the supervisor or the contractor does something wrong.
Yeah, there's been accidents. There was an accident in Manhattan, probably 2 years ago, and the two people were charged criminally, and one got jail time. And that's a welcome thing because the bad actors need to be squeezed out of the business because they're no good for developers, they're no good for the workers, they're no good for their own companies.
And also homeowners or small businesses can face economic ruin if they are sued after an accident. I'm sorry, what else were you going to say, Patrick?
No, you're absolutely right. And homeowners should be aware of the scaffold law, which is the 240, Section 240, where any gravity-related accident is basically it's all on what we call the controlling entity in construction or the homeowner. If you have people coming, you should talk to your insurance company and say, what kind of a purchase order or a contract or what kind of insurance do I need from this guy before he comes to clean my gutters, before he comes to do a sidewalk, whatever. Because if there is an accident, because of workman's comp, you can't sue your employer directly. But what happens typically is people sue the controlling entity saying that they contributed to an unsafe condition. They, in turn, will pull in your employer.
Right. And those controlling entities can include the homeowner, the contractor, the subcontractor. If some of them don't have proper insurance, it may fall to you. And a homeowner, a small business owner, or even a large business owner should always speak to their own attorney. But ideally, you want to be named as a named insured on their insurance policy so you have full protection. Absolutely. I've done this a few times. I always consult my lawyer. We're starting a new division of our business, and I'm speaking to my lawyers about the rental agreement that we're going to have and the kind of insurance that we want. And a lot of it, I don't understand the named insured, the additional insured, there's action over indemnification. I don't pretend to understand it, but between my lawyer and my insurance broker, I take their advice before I do anything, and they guide me to reduce my exposure. And that's why if you have a construction contract or something, you may want to have a lawyer look at it to make sure your interests are protected and not just rely on the architect who may, be working for a couple of different parties. Anyway, you've developed... go ahead.
Absolutely, I agree with you. The architect, people often say to me, well, how come the architect didn't get involved? The architect designs the building. He's very specifically, on his drawings, he'll say, I have no presence on site. I'm not responsible for safety. I'm not responsible for the execution of the work, the planning of the work. They have layers and layers of indemnification. So it's on the homeowner to say, look, I have to make sure that I'm protected. I need to pass whatever project I'm doing. I need it. My insurance company, my homeowner's policy has got to pass muster with them, because it's not about being at fault. It's about the cost of defending yourself, which is, very often a very substantial cost, because you have to go to depositions, you have to be represented, it's not cheap, and you can get wiped out. A very simple accident, a slip and fall on a construction project, the guy goes to, he files suit, the cost of the litigation could be $100,000.
And even if you're not at fault, you may have to, pay the money to protect yourself for the cost of litigation.
I was involved in a job on 57th Street in Manhattan. I wasn't on site. I was the master rigger of record. I had put in a system. A guy tripped over a wire that he had installed himself as a tieback for a hanging scaffold. I had installed it according to the drawings. It wasn't my design. It was designed by an engineer. I had installed it according to the design. I was absolutely not culpable, but it cost me $25,000 between depositions and legal costs and time.
And the moral story is also, if it's a big project or a complicated project, the owner or the business may want to hire an architect or engineer to actually come to the job to supervise the methods and the materials to make sure it's done right, aside from safety issues. I just want to move along. You developed an acronym called PERMIT to help prevent accidents. Just explain that to us.
I had a steel company, and I had one of my engineers. I said, look, we have to come up with a system for making sure that we have everything we need on the job, because the accidents happen because we're compromising, we're improvising, and improvising is compromising because we don't have the right tools, or we can't trust that the guys remember to bring all the right tools, or that they brought enough material for the work or the manpower. So we came up with a thing called PERMIT, PERMIT. And PERMIT is the 6 resources you need on any project, anything. If you're a homeowner and you're getting work done, that's the 6 resources you need to avoid an accident. P is personnel. You must have the right people, and they must be trained properly. And you have to have enough of them. You can't be understaffed. So you got personnel. E is for equipment. You must look ahead of time and make sure you have all of the proper equipment to do the job. If you need a tool, go get it beforehand. Don't wait until after you started the job. Anticipate the need and have it there. So have the right equipment. A lot of accidents are caused because people say, well, I don't have the proper thing, but maybe this will do. I can get 2 ladders and put a plank across because I've got to get this job done. Well, ladders are for access. They're not for working from. So equipment is very important to have the right equipment. R is room to work. If you're on a construction site, make sure that you look at the area, because very often you'll have a different trade that's been working in that area before you. And if he's not finished, or if he's finished and left his tools and materials there, it's in your way. You have to get rid of it. You can't start when you don't have enough room to work. It may be if you're doing an outside project, you have to leave enough room. If you're employing a contractor coming in, you have to make sure he has enough room to work, to park his truck, to lay out his tools, in order to work safely. M is material. Obviously, you have to have the correct material, but you also have to have, on construction jobs, particularly in New York City, there's never enough room for all the trades to bring all of their material at one time. So you have to feed the job. And that takes a little bit of planning, because you can't just bring, the contractor won't allow you to just bring your material, bring all of it. Let's say the plumber, he can't bring, if it's a 10-story building, he can't bring in everything he needs for all 10 floors. He has to feed the job efficiently. So that's a study that needs to be done on the material and material flow. Then I is information. Information is a drawing on what you're doing. Do you have the correct drawing? If there's not a drawing involved, if you're the homeowner and you have a contractor come in, you have to make sure that you give them the information clearly and in writing. No he said, she said, so you come back and he's cut down the wrong tree, or he's done. It has to be, the information has to be delivered clearly. And T, obviously, is time. It's important to sit and say, well, look, this is the amount of time that's needed to do the project. And, of course, in the construction industry, there's always a frenzy. Get it done, get it done, get it done. You know how much a day it's costing me not to have my CFO? You have to fight for the amount of time you want. If you need 6 days, don't try and squeeze it into 4. Somebody else will try and squeeze you into 4, but it's the old story. If you need 6 days, ask for 8. If you get it, you're going to look like a hero finishing in 6. And you have a little bit of room there, a little bit of negotiating room. But you have to fight for those resources. And I tell clients all the time, if this is the 6 things that I need. If you short me on any one of those, then you have no case. You have no grounds to come to me looking for a pound of flesh. But I assure you, if you give me all 6 of those in the amounts that I need, guaranteed the job will be done safely, no stop work orders, no violations.
And what are some other safety measures that should be taken to prevent on-the-job construction injuries?
I think that I'm used to the city, the 5 boroughs of New York City. They're pretty good. The DOB, the Department of Buildings, are very vigilant. The site safety guys are very good, and they're generally they're an outside agency. For people, if people see an unsafe condition on a job, if they're working on a job, very often there's a reluctance to go to your foreman or your manager or your superintendent because you kind of earmark yourself as a troublemaker. What I tell people is, if you see something that's not right, talk to the site safety guy. He's not going to give you up. He's not going to rat you out. And it's in his interest because it looks bad if there are accidents on his job, so he will be proactive. So go to the site safety guy, say, look, I want you to come up to the 5th floor. There's a guy in there, and it may not even be you. It might be somebody working on a ladder beside you that's not your trade and has nothing to do with you, but it's not going to feel great if he lands on you. You have no control over him because you have no contractual relationship. He's not your worker. He's not your co-worker. He may be a different trade. He might be a plumber. He might be an electrician. And if he's working unsafely, it's going to affect you.
Right, because you may get sued. You may be caught up in a stop work order. It's, et cetera.
Yep.
And you also mentioned earlier about the idea of having the right tools, but it's also important to make sure they're functioning in good condition and not, ready to fall apart.
Oh, of course. That goes without saying, but anybody who's a professional in the business is going to make sure that. And actually, that's a good point that you make, Ken, because very often you have guys on the job and they look and they'll say, well, you know what, this extension cord is a little bit frayed. Let me throw it in the dumpster. And I've seen people take stuff back out of the dumpster. It happens with us.
Or even the ladders or other equipment may be kind of worn out and bent and not up to the task, even if it's appropriate for that job.
It's very important to recognize when the useful life is gone out of something and say, you know what, it's time to chop this up, throw it in the dumpster, and get a new one.
And you really have the right ladders and the right equipment for that kind of project. Not skimp on that.
I walked out of a safety meeting on Broadway and 24th Street one day, and it was like this company, and they're super. They had a big manual, like a telephone book of rules and regulations and what they did and the safety, and it was very impressive. And I walked out, and there's a guy on a 6-foot ladder standing on the top rung, and all of the suits that were at the meeting walked by him. And I stopped him, I challenged him, I said, guys, you talk the talk, but you won't give this guy a ladder. He has to reach up to, 12 feet in the air. He's on the top rung. I think it was the 6-foot ladder. He's standing on top. Well, you all know that's a no-no. You can't go beyond the second last step. And you all just walk by him.
And also for some, heights, you need a second person to act as a backup to hold that ladder. It's not worth taking a shortcut.
Well, it's never worth taking a shortcut because I say to people all the time, if you have an accident, if something happens, how does that help me? How does it help the project? I had an iron worker on a job in Manhattan, and I said, well, listen, I said, put your gloves on, Pete. He was handling metal. He was handling sheets of metal deck. And he said, no, I'm okay. I said, no, Pete, you don't understand. When you cut your hand, because you don't know how this metal is formed. This metal is formed and there's a deburring thing at the factory. If that's not working properly, you'll have a sharp edge. It's like a paper cut, but much more severe. I said, guess what happens? You go to the hospital. The shop steward, for some reason, has to go with you. He has no medical training, but he has to go with you. So now I lose 2 guys out of a 6-man crew. So I lose 1/3 of my crew because you wouldn't put your gloves on.
Right.
I said, this is not about, I don't care if you get run over when you're going to the deli, but not on my dime. Put your gloves on, because guys have this thing like that safety is somehow a wimpy sort of thing, but it's good business.
Right. And we're going to have to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue